Hey, hello, can everyone hear me? Hello? Hello, you can also just type in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Just let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. All right, cool, cheers. So I think I'm just gonna get started. There are people who will be joining us as we go along. Um, and basically just to kick off this Solidity Bootcamp, first of all, cheers. There are some familiar names like Emmanuel. I know, so I think I interacted with you briefly during the Telos hackathon as well. I believe you were part of Team Abyss. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think, was it the same for you, Abiodun? Which team were you also part of the Telos hackathon? Because I think your names seem very familiar to me as well. Okay, so I'm just gonna turn on my camera for a second just to introduce myself a bit better. So for most of you, you may know me through the hackathons or the dev hour sessions we've been doing here at Memoi. But by and large, my name is Jadal Sule, and I'm the technical lead here. Since we're very few on the call as we're getting started, people will join us as we continue. I think it's also beneficial because I get to be a bit more intentional and personal in terms of what we'll be able to talk about today. And just a brief background about myself. I started out as a software developer, backend purely. I tried the full stack for a while, but it wasn't working for me. I'd rather just be good at one thing and really get as in-depth into it as possible. So started out as a dev not too long ago, actually. My first dev role was in 2019. So it's only been about 4 years of being a software dev. And I was working in backend, PHP mostly, in terms of the systems we were building. Then from there, I went into data science for I think 6 or so months, mostly working as a data analyst, just learning the tricks of the trade. But then I realized that this wasn't for me specifically. So what happened next is that I got into cybersecurity. I started out as a pen tester, then went into vulnerability analysis. Now I still do pen testing here and there, but I'm also into security operations center work. So mostly monitoring and incident response for the number of projects that we are currently partnered with here at. I also work with ILAB Africa in Nairobi. So that's basically what I do there. In terms of Web3, I'm a Web3 dev in Africa Blockchain Center, and we mostly work on SSI or decentralized identity solutions. So currently what we're building is in the Cardano ecosystem, but I still have a number of projects that I'm working on in the Ethereum space, particularly in Telos, as well as now in networks like Celo as well. So just a brief history of my dev journey as well. And since I'm guessing there are like 5 on the call as guys that you're joining in, I also want to hear more about you guys. Like, what do you do in the tech space? Have you been a developer for a while? Are you starting out? I just want to hear from you as well. And what interests you about Web3, or why did you go that route? So maybe I can start with Emmanuel as well. Like, what do you do in the tech space, and how did you get into Web3? I don't know, Emmanuel, can you hear me? Just feel free to unmute your mic and go ahead. Oh, sorry, I think I didn't turn that on. Yeah, you can go ahead now. Yeah.
Okay. Good day. My name is Emmanuel. Um, I'm a graduate of electronics engineering, and I've been around in tech, but basically I've been teaching people web development and data analysis. I do data analysis, and also try to. I'm an adult learner. I try to learn things because I have a fast head for understanding things.
Yeah.
Well, I've not really done some professional, like I don't really have some professional job experience. Though I've been building things building for one project and another. So I was really excited this period. I say, okay, one of the ways I could really actually build something instead of waiting out and submitting CVs is to participate in hackathon and see what I could build. So I think I saw someone share about Taylor's hackathon. So I really jumped into it. Was very much eager. I learned lecture last year. I learned about writing smart contract, building and stuff. I did some project for someone, for the person didn't later have the much zeal to push it forward. So the project just died there. So then Metelo's hackathon I was very eager to actually build something and then put it as a job that I've done, pending to when I could really work with organization that I would contribute much. So but till then I always want to be upscaling so I could get a chance.
Awesome. I love that mindset. I think it's always good to continue learning and challenging yourself. And I'm sure that a lot of great opportunities will come up just through that as well. And maybe I could hear from you, Abiodun. I hope I've said your name right. So maybe just want to hear in terms of your experience, how did you get into Web3? Yeah.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So my name is Yaya Biodun. Currently, I'm a back-end engineer for a startup. So I've been in tech for like maybe 2 years now. So I've been nailing Python, JavaScript to build like backend. So I know how to use Django and Node.js, Express, Nest.js. So my drive in tech is curiosity for knowledge. So I'm always like, in particular, to know how all the system works behind the scene, not just seeing things and use it, not from consumer perspective, just for like, okay, how did they come about thinking about something like this? How did they come about? So this curiosity mindset always drive me into learning new skills, learning something. So when I heard about Web3, I was like, okay, Web3, I need to know something about it. So that's why I'm really expecting a lot from this program. So I'm looking forward to learning Solidity, writing smart contracts and stuff like that. Thank you.
Awesome, love to hear it. How about you, James? What's your background and what made you interested in learning or getting into Web3?
Okay, nice. I think you can hear me all clearly.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm James Osonga from Kenya. I'm currently a blockchain developer having 1 year experience. Joined Web3 last year, but still pressing on. Okay, currently I've done Solidity before, but I just want some to gain more knowledge because even devs we all don't match to be some. We are not all strong, but we have to learn from. We move from near level up to submerged level. We're still not senior. I'm not senior as such. Currently, I'm dealing with the Cairo, the Stacknet itself, working, making open contributions for Stacknet. But I'm personally eager to learn more from this bootcamp Solidity. Thank you. I'm from Kenya.
All right, awesome. Thank you, James. Just a quick follow-up question. What protocols are you working with currently?
Oh, Can you come up again? It was a bit training.
What protocols are you working on or with currently?
Currently, I'm working on several applications. Mostly, I think you can hear me clearly. I'm more like losing you due to rain on this side.
Uh,
I'm currently working on several.
okay, thanks. Nice, interesting. So I think I like that we have all different backgrounds as well. But one thing that's common is as long as you're willing to learn, I think that's the best perspective to take. Another thing I'll mention is just a couple of rules as we continue with this bootcamp for the next 4 days or so. Is number one, feel free to contribute or ask any questions. I'm very open. I also lecture classes in Strathmore University sometimes. So I prefer dealing with now my students or some of my colleagues in a more open-ended way. If something doesn't make sense, feel free to type it in the chat or just raise your hand, then I can give you the opportunity just to speak. Since we're few as we're starting out now, I'm sure we have a number of people joining us as we continue, but take advantage of the fact that we're basically like 5 in the call at the moment, so at least we can be able to talk about things a bit more in depth. Thirdly is there are things that I know that maybe you don't, and there are things that you know that maybe I don't. So feel free to share something interesting in the chat as we go along with the sessions that we'll be having. And basically it will allow us to be able to open and actually talk about things a bit more in depth. And the last thing would be, I prefer these sessions being a bit more conversational. So as much as I'm going through the slides, I'll be posing questions to you here and there, and I'm going to take it through a narrative, because when it comes to Web3, I like talking about it like a story, because things where we are now came from a perspective of things that have happened before, and we need to be aware of that. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that as well. And with that, I'm just going to say welcome to the world of Solidity, and we can go ahead and start with the bootcamp. So I'm just going to share my screen and basically take you through what we're going to be discussing today. So today is purely an introductory session. It's going to be very chilled out. And we might even be done in the next 40 or so minutes as well. And what we're going to be talking about today is basically just a brief introduction into what is Solidity, primarily in terms of as a language, what has it been able to help us achieve and the likes. We're going to talk about what smart contracts are, and basically just give an overview of the tools that you'll be interacting with on a day-to-day as you become a dev, especially in the Ethereum ecosystem as well. The IDE I'm going to be using for today and tomorrow's session is mostly going to be Remix, because it's the most easy one to start with. I think I've gone over it a number of times, even during the Telos Bootcamp, and even during the DevOps sessions, we've been able to hold in memory. And finally, I'm just going to show you how we basically compile, deploy, and interact with the basic smart contract that we can generate on Remix as well. So I think we're just going to go and get started. So first things first, we're going to talk about Solidity. I've heard about a number of you mentioned that you're backend devs, which is a good thing. So at least you may have some experience with stuff like Python, C++, JavaScript as well in your own little development circles, or even in your own jobs and applications as well. One thing I like to talk about is how did we get to this particular point, and why did the Ethereum ecosystem decide to go with Solidity? So, like it says, Solidity is a contract-oriented high-level programming language. What that means is high-level is that the code that you write is similar to human language, basically, taking you back to maybe your first class in development, maybe in uni, maybe you're self-taught, but that's always something that you hear, high-level. It just means that we can be able to write functions in plain English or languages that we can all understand. And Solidity, as a result, is heavily inspired by C++, Python, and JavaScript. And the reason why the Ethereum team decided to go this route is, I'm recording the sessions as we continue, so don't worry about that. We'll also be posting them on YouTube, so at least everyone can have access to these sessions as well. So the reason that that Solidity is inspired by these languages is because, think about it like this here. What's the point of coming up with a technology that no one can use or people will have a hard time understanding? And that's the reason why they decided to go the route of, let's make something that's familiar enough that people can migrate to, but also be able to satisfy the needs and perform the functions we need it to within the blockchain ecosystem. And that's the reason why they went with this specific route. Then in terms of what Solidity can do, it's statically typed and supports inheritance, libraries, and complex user-defined types for programming language. So what it means is you're able to now create complex programs or contracts in this sense that can be able to allow the users or developers to create really resourceful and unique use cases based on these base functionalities that Solidity has provided. And examples of how it's used are mostly in voting systems, crowdfunding, auctions, and multi-signature wallets, just as the base use cases that we've seen so far of Solidity within the particular ecosystem. And just to feed into that is through Solidity as a language is we're able to implement smart contracts. Basically, in a more technical definition, as you can see on the screen, it basically says a smart contract is a computer protocol intended to digitally facilitate, verify, or enforce the negotiation or performance of a contract. Basically, it makes it, how do we automate contracts in the real world or agreements between two parties in a very arbitrary or in a very unbiased way, in simple terms. And one of the reasons why we do this is because we also want to enhance the trackability and make sure that these contracts or these agreements are irreversible. So no one is acting out of order or trying to take advantage of the system in that sense. And just as an illustration of this, as Investopedia says it's basically a self-executing contract with terms of agreements between buyers and sellers being directly written into lines of code. An example that I would give would be if I'll even use crowdfunding since I think everyone is aware of this. If we decide that we want to come together and save money for a particular cause, maybe it's for charity, maybe it's for us to start a business as a group of friends or people, a smart contract will enable us to do that in a permanent and also verifiable way. And the reason for this is because, okay, maybe you reach the amount of money that you want to save or to store, and maybe it can even be people that you don't even know very well, or people that you don't trust. What you would find is that through this smart contract, it removes that element of you having to know and trust this person. It makes it very easy for people to work together without having to worry about your money being stolen and stuff like that, which is kind of the key reason for this. And even how we got to smart contracts is, now I'm just going to give you a brief roadmap of how we got into blockchain and how in terms of how blockchain started and where we are now. So I'm going to take you way back to maybe the mid-90s when computers were still a new thing and people weren't so sure about whether it's going to work and everything. And how the internet used to work early on was basically a client and a server, where you find that all the resources that people need to access or that people need to use are stored in remote locations. Then you and me as normal people or users just try and access them through our computers at the time. And this worked well for a huge period of time. And however, there are a couple of things that came up. Number one would be security concerns in terms of how do we know that these resources are secure? How do I protect myself as an end user? Secondly is in terms of who owns the data and who controls it. How unbiased is it actually? And in recent years, we've been able to see that, by the way, it is easy for companies to abuse their power in terms of the data about us that they hold. Example is everyone knows about what happened with Facebook earlier on. Everyone knows about what happened with, let's say, companies like Cambridge Analytica and all of those political scandals. And also the whole thing with the financial crash in the late to early, like 2008, 2009 there in the US, which really changed a lot of things in people's lives. And people also realized that financially, there's so much central authority. So that's how the first concept of blockchain came about. Contrary to popular belief, the first paper on blockchain wasn't written by Satoshi. It was the first widely known cryptocurrency implementation. However, there were two papers prior that were written in the late 80s and early 90s that still had the concept of a decentralized ledger being introduced into the world. It's just that with the environment as it was in the early 2000s, or late 2000s, you'd find that this was not the prime time for blockchain to now start making noise in terms of this is the capabilities of what we can do. And the first major use case was in cryptocurrencies. How do we make it such that as people, we decide what the value of our money is and how much of that money can actually be printed or minted? And that was a major selling point of Bitcoin. And this was good for a time. However, as time went by, we realized a couple of issues or challenges with Bitcoin. Primarily, number one would be, okay, cryptocurrencies are amazing and they've opened up a lot of opportunities, but I'm a football fan, and there's a quote that a player called Zlatan Ibrahimovic usually says, "Why buy a Ferrari and drive it like a Fiat?" when he's referring to how one of his managers, Pep Guardiola, treated him. And I always laugh, but it was actually pretty true. And when you think about blockchain, think about blockchain 1.0, an amazing use case, but it's like blockchain is a Ferrari, but Bitcoin is treating it like a Fiat in terms of it only being applicable to one use case, and that being cryptocurrencies. Sorry about that. Seemed to have dropped off for a second, but I think we can still continue. Let me just confirm. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, sorry about that. The call seemed to have dropped off for a second there, but I think we are good to go once more. So like I was talking about the use cases of blockchain and basically how we got to where we are. Then I was talking about Bitcoin, and I was like, the first problem was number one, blockchain has a lot of potential, but Bitcoin only showcased one way of using it. And the reason this was a problem was because knowing how a blockchain works, for you to make changes to the whole system, majority of the computers need to agree. That's easy when you're adding lead transactions, but when you're trying to change the underlying architecture to add new use cases, that's a whole different board game. That's why it's not so easy for Bitcoin to change from proof of work to proof of stake, because it will require a lot of technical know-how and a lot of cooperation across the whole network. So that would be very difficult to do. So the other problem now would also be in terms of people are more concerned about the environment as well. And Bitcoin mining had a huge carbon footprint in terms of its effect on the environment, and people are not really happy about that. So for a time, during 2017, then again in 2019, there was a dip in terms of the value of Bitcoin just because of environmental concerns. And this gave the opportunity for newer blockchain systems to come about. And that's how we got to blockchain 2.0, where we talk about smart contracts and virtual machines. So think about it like this, yeah. Vitalik's team realized that, okay, we can't change how Bitcoin works, but we can make another network that solves these challenges. And that's how they came up with smart contracts. So they basically built a virtual machine. Think of it like a container that allows you to run functions or programming languages on the blockchain, and actually also utilize the ledger or the transaction infrastructure to interact with that particular contract. And we're going to get more into smart contracts and Solidity from tomorrow in the more technical sense. This is more of a discussion and an introduction as well. So like I mentioned before, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I can talk about blockchain and tech forever because there's so much that you can say, but I'd also like to hear more from you guys as well. And within smart contracts, this allowed us to now come up with things like voting systems. That's how we got things like NFTs, where it became so popular for a time because, there's something actually that's really interesting, really cool that we can do in the blockchain ecosystem. And you know what, let's actually try it. So that gave a lot of people the opportunity, and smart contracts and the virtual machine of Ethereum really changed the game for a lot of people. But Ethereum wasn't perfect when it came about. Firstly, the main issue was in terms of Ethereum was still built on the proof of work concept. So it hadn't solved the issue of the environmental issue. Then secondly, with proof of work, it worked for Bitcoin because they were mostly dealing with transactions and maybe the transaction per minute were a bit low. But with the introduction of smart contracts, you realize that they're very data intensive. And for you to put data on the blockchain, it costs a lot more. So Ethereum became very expensive for developers to deploy their smart contracts within that particular ecosystem, which was a bit of a headache. Ethereum was the second largest blockchain network, but because of these challenges with their transaction fees, it gave opportunity to other networks like Cardano to come in, Solana to come in and be like, you know what? We have cheaper transactions. Why don't you use our blockchains instead? But Ethereum was still king, and Vitalik and team knew that, listen, we still have the larger market share. We just need to have a roadmap to show people that, look, we are solving this scalability issue, and we are solving this transaction fee issue. So they came up with the 2-3-year plan where they're moving from Ethereum L1 to L2. And what this involved was, how do we change our network from working on the proof of work to becoming a fully proof of stake consensus blockchain? Proof of work meaning you're calculating large hashes to find or to add blocks to the chain and to mint new tokens. But for proof of stake, basically people stake the tokens or the Ethereum tokens they have on the network to show that this is their right to mine new blocks and mint new tokens. And that will make it way more efficient to do this. I think what we'll do is we'll have a dev hour session just talking about consensus mechanisms. I don't want to get too much into it because this is introductory. I know most of you guys are starting out with blockchain, because consensus mechanisms is a whole other topic and it's really interesting to talk about as well. But I'm just trying to give you guys a brief history of how blockchain has been evolving throughout the past few years as well. And the other thing I'd also like to mention, still within Ethereum, is that within this roadmap, they also had something we call L2s. So as much as Ethereum is switching to their proof of stake chain, people were like, you know what, this might take too long. Why don't we come up with a way of building other blockchains on top of Ethereum such that we can validate the transactions on our chains? Then we push those transactions onto the main Ethereum chain without them having to be validated again, making it cheaper and allowing the scalability of Ethereum to continue to grow. And until that point, that was actually interesting. So it's more like you're outsourcing the ability to validate transactions to other blockchains that make it way cheaper. And that's what Ethereum was doing concurrently. That's how we come up with the concept of things like L2 solutions. And how these solutions come about are either in two ways. It can either be a ZK, a zero knowledge proof rollout, or something we call an optimism rollout. I'm just going to mention them now. I'm not going to explain what they are just yet, because we'll have sessions on that later in next year, just to get into what these actually mean. But Ethereum was already thinking about solving the scalability issue, which brings us to blockchain 3.0, where you're focusing more on scalable good, user interfaces, user experiences, and the likes. And here's where we get stuff like Polkadot coming in with their multi-chain, Cardano coming in with their efficiency, and also now Ethereum's proof of stake chain that they've been working on. And finally, we're also now focusing on industry infrastructure and blockchain-based ecosystem in terms of how do we integrate this with things that we're using now, and basically how will it be such that we can actually have a technical ecosystem that's fully integrated with blockchain as well. So let me take a breather. Let me open it up to you guys. Do you have any questions or comments before we continue? I know I'm talking a lot, so I'd want to hear from you guys briefly if you have any questions. Or are you guys all right? You guys are good? Okay, awesome. So based on that, I'm going to talk about the tools that you interact with. So in order to write smart contracts, you're going to have a code editor, basically, just like in any other programming setting. So mostly you can be using Visual Studio Code or Remix. Those are the ones that we interact with the most. And there are also frameworks to help you get started with building decentralized applications and to write Ethereum smart contracts. The two most common ones would be TruffleSuite and Hardhat. I've already given tutorials on how to use TruffleSuite on our YouTube channels through, sorry about that, through Ethereum, not Ethereum, through the hackathon we've just done, as well as the Dev Hour sessions. So for this bootcamp, we'll be looking at how do we set this up using Hardhat. You also need to learn about like API management tools. So think about it like this here. Maybe you want to connect to multiple different blockchain networks for different projects. Then you also want to connect to different file storage options that you can also do. But doing them one by one is a bit difficult. So a tool like Infura helps you to connect to all of these services through one platform, making it so easy for you to manage. That's an interesting tool to do. So in terms of blockchain networks you can use to actually test out your smart contracts, you can use any EVM testnet. So for this one, you're going to be using the Goerli, Goerli testnet. There's also the Optimism testnet that you can use. Then there's also Ganache, which is like a local blockchain that you can set up on your own PC to test things out as well. It works really well with Truffle as well. Then for decentralized file storage, maybe you want to store the images of the files for your NFTs and the likes, you can use IPFS or you can use Filecoin. Then finally, you can also build smart contracts directly with Solidity as well. So I think that's it in terms of tools. What I'm gonna do next is just open it up and show you how it looks. So maybe if I can open Remix here briefly. So the good thing about Remix is like it's basically an online tool that you can use to write and develop your smart contract. So it makes it pretty simple for people to interact with and get up to speed with. So this is how it looks. We'll get more into this tool tomorrow as we get started into the real development work, as we talk about what exactly Solidity is. Today, just wanted to have a discussion with you guys so that we can get the introductions out of the way and actually start coding. Because personally, as devs, I don't know if you're like me, but I just like getting into it, just looking at the code, actually writing it without having to look at notes. I hope this is the last time I have to show slides the next 4 days. The next thing we're just going to be doing is coding and doing walkthroughs as well. So this is how it looks. So if you want to find your smart contracts, there's a folder here where you can be able to write them. For example, there's token.so, which I was writing for the last bootcamp or the last dev session that we did. Still over here, so writing the smart contract. Then if you want to compile it, you can compile it here into the different Solidity versions, which we'll talk about more tomorrow. If you want to deploy it to a testnet or even connect it to your wallet, you can do so on this particular tab. There's also the debugger that we have here for analyzing why your code might not be working the way you're expecting it to. And then finally, you have the part for actually doing unit tests or creating tests for each of the functions in your smart contract. It's pretty straightforward. You can also connect it to GitHub if you want, or to Gist, or whichever platform you feel like. Pretty simple and direct way to do it as well. So we'll get more into actually using Remix tomorrow. Today, just for me to introduce you to what the tools that you'll be interacting with. And maybe I'll just briefly show you how Ganache looks if you haven't interacted with it before. Then I'm still opening it up. But I think once we're done, I think I'll be winding up on today's session. Today is mostly introductory to bring you guys up to speed. Then also just a reminder, make sure to join the WhatsApp group. The links have been shared to you via email as well. In terms of, that's where I'll be giving updates on the assignments and where to find the specific resources for the next few days as well. So I think Ganache has opened up. Let me just do this. So this is how it looks. So basically you can create your own specific workspace, or you can have a quick start. So it basically creates a quick blockchain setup for you with like 10 accounts that you can use, each with like 100 Ethereum tokens for you to test run and deploy your smart contracts as well. It's a bit heavy to use. So there's also like the paper lightweight versions of blockchains that you can use to run as command line tools. But Ganache is the most easy in terms of plug and play for you to interact with as well. So I think it's still loading. Yeah, so I think it's loading. Maybe let me open it up to you guys. Do you guys have any questions or comments or requests as we go along with the sessions for the rest of the week? I don't know, Emmanuel, how are you doing? Liasu, are you guys good?
Yes, yeah. I'm feeling the progress, yes.
Okay, how about the rest of you? Yeah, how are you doing? So you're saying something?
I'm following what you are saying. I'm following it. Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything that's not clear or anything you want me to mention briefly?
No. Nothing at all.
All right, perfect. So just like I was saying, so this is how Ganache looks. So we'll be using these different accounts just to test and run different smart contracts. So you can be able to see the contracts that you would have deployed, as well as the transactions that you would have done, within this particular testnet. Then you can also get more information about the blocks that would have been mined. Then maybe if you have any errors or challenges, you can just go through to the log files. So it'll give you more information about what's running on this particular blockchain. So if a function call has failed, you can find out more information about it here as well. Then even in terms of the events specifically that have happened within this particular interface. So that's just a quick overview of how Ganache looks and how it operates. And starting tomorrow, we can actually interact with these things more practically as well. So cheers for your time, guys. Just as a quick heads up for tomorrow, just be ready with your laptops and your code editors, because we'll be doing a lot more interactive work as well. So I hope you guys have a lovely evening. We'll catch up tomorrow. For the recordings, I'll share them as well through the YouTube channels. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. You guys have a lovely evening.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, hello?
Okay. I just want to ask something. There is this idea of actually having when Pauline talked about speeches. Blockchain, since I mean, I'm not hearing about anybody developing on Bitcoin. So it's I was not again, since Bitcoin is this proof of work, why can't other coins or other projects thrives on Bitcoin?
Sorry,
The same way we can,
could
like
you
the same way. Okay, I'm trying to come back. I'm trying to paraphrase. Yes, the same way we can build projects, travel funds, NFTs on Ethereum. Why can't we develop smart contracts or projects on Bitcoin?
okay, so just to correct me if I'm wrong, the question you're asking is why can we build smart contracts on Ethereum but not on Bitcoin?
Yes.
Okay, so just as a recap of that, it's mostly to do with how it's built. The architecture of Bitcoin is completely different from what Ethereum has. For example, Bitcoin doesn't have a virtual machine for compiling and translating complex programming languages. Okay, so for example, for you to write pub script, which is now like the scripts that run on the Bitcoin ecosystem, they don't support algebraic functions, first of all. And even in terms of how they do some particular calculations, it is not completely determined. Let me put it like this. There's functionalities in Bitcoin that, in Ethereum, that are not available in Bitcoin. And also the data structure of Bitcoin doesn't allow the storage of smart contracts. So that's why people are trying to come up with this concept of blockchain 5.0, in that Bitcoin is trying to upgrade its architecture or infrastructure to start supporting the development of smart contracts within the ecosystem. Currently, that functionality is not available. That's why people don't build on the Bitcoin network. I hope I've answered your question. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah. At least I'm getting some ideas.
Okay. If you want me to touch more on it as well, I can always do a recap tomorrow just to share more information about what the specific architecture of Bitcoin looks like and the differences with Ethereum as well. So I think I can also just mention more on that tomorrow as well.
Okay, so that would still be great. Because over time, I think doctor is like, but I've always been like, is blockchain all about writing scripts on Ethereum, or writing code on Ethereum, then trying to interface it with the two. But then I used to hear some people are blockchain developers. Then I'll be like, what's blockchain developer? What is smart contract developer? What's the difference? So therefore, are they still the same thing?
Yeah, I think I get you in that sense. I'm sorry. I think the part which I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know if it's background noise, but in terms of the whole discussion that developers have about smart contracts and what the differences are, like it's something that you, as you're getting started out, can be a bit confusing, but it becomes clearer as time goes by, definitely. Like for me, one of the key things that used to confuse me was the whole thing about gas fees and accounts. But after a while, I actually got them into it. And I think the best starting point is actually Solidity, because trust me, when you start trying to write smart contracts in Haskell, the first few months is just tears, but eventually you get the gist of it as well. So I think that's a good point you brought up. So maybe we can just pick it up from tomorrow as well. Just as a point to note, I won't be taking you through all the sessions during the week. We also have a number of guest speakers coming in from our partners who will also be speaking on some specific topics as well. So you can also look forward to that as well. So as always, I'll see you guys same time tomorrow. Thank you for your time and hope to interact with you more as well. So bye-bye.